Rob, first of all, with Sadie, you do actually have a very interesting character because she's actually too young to be an adult yet, but also too old to believe in the monster in the closet. So she's
Yeah,
somewhere in between and going from believing to not believing. And I
yeah.
was wondering, when you were that age, what kind of an impact did that actually have on you and your fantasy as a future storyteller?
I think that was around the age, maybe a little bit younger, but that was around the age that I started getting into horror movies. So I
Wow.
stopped believing in childish things like the boogeyman and the monster under the bed, and then immediately terrified myself all over again by watching The Evil Dead and Hellraiser and just
Yeah.
a lot of movies that I shouldn't be watching when I was 13, 14, or whatever age. Um, and yeah, so I think horror movies allowed me to never really grow up into that adult. I'm kind of still in that liminal space between being a terrified little kid and an adult.
Wow, awesome. And I mean, Sawyer, for example, gets told that when there are scary things we don't understand, our minds try to fill in the blanks.
Mm.
And I was wondering, what would you? I was wondering if you do actually remember how your mind was trying to fill in the blanks when you were, afraid of the monster in the closet as a kid, because we all were.
Yeah, I always thought that every time I would wake up and look, I didn't have a closet, but I would look into the dark corner of the room, and I had this nightmarish the thing that would scare me the most is that I would think that every time I looked, the creature had just hidden. And then every time I looked away, it would get a bit closer. So I would
Ooh, oh
always
yeah.
I would go to bed and then I'd look up straight away. And then I'd put my head down, I'd look up straight away. So I always imagined that the creature was getting closer and closer every time I wasn't looking.
Oh, that gives me chills right now again. Did you actually have, because I remember, when I was going like, oh my God, I think there might be a monster, and I was serious. And then there were some adults who were actually giving me the descriptions, And I was
Mm.
wondering if you ever had that, if actually there were some adults who were actually making fun of that and giving you the descriptions that you actually believed.
It was actually Stephen King who was giving me those descriptions. My parents told me you can't watch scary movies and you can't read Stephen King, and so of course those were the only two things that I wanted to do. So I snuck in Stephen King short story books and I would read Night Shift and Skeleton Crew and just scare myself silly. And some of the descriptions in those books absolutely terrified me, and still terrify me.
And what I love about storytelling and filmmakers is the fact that you guys are basically therapists and psychologists yourself, like Chris Messina's character, because you are coming up with problems, but you're also coming up with the solutions. For example, in this movie, you are trying to make the family realize that they will have to interact with each other, that they will have
Yes.
to address what's going on in order to have a chance to heal. And I was wondering if, being a storyteller can be a little bit helpful, to kind of get it right in real life, or if you feel like that you are struggling just like everybody else, even though you try to come up with certain solutions to certain stuff.
That's a really great question. No, I'm just as much of a mess as anyone else. But I think, I think one of the great things about making a movie like this, which me and the actors really wanted it to feel honest and authentic, and we wanted it not to feel like just a movie version of a family in grief. We wanted it to feel like the real thing, and I just lost somebody close to me before the movie started shooting, and Chris
Oh,
Messina
all
had
right.
just also experienced a death, and so we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing a cynical version of this movie. Um, and so that was really cathartic. It's like being able to have open conversations with the actors, with the collaborators, and actually speak about these things that you normally wouldn't speak about while making this movie was really a kind of healthy learning process that I think helped kind of clarify a lot of things for me. While I was going through that same thing, um, as well as enacting it on screen.
No, that's really exactly what I love about horror movies, because it's the fact that you actually you show us, like conflicts and problems, loss. Everybody experiences loss, so they can all relate to that. And then you have, like even like the Boogeyman, that kind of serves as a metaphor in a way. And for
Mm-hmm.
example, in this movie, actually kind of feels like an eye opener, because otherwise the characters will probably still not talk to each other about what had happened.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If you don't talk, if you don't speak to that inner darkness, if you just let it sit there, it's
Yeah.
going to grow and grow into something that can't be ignored. And that's really what the creature is. So ultimately, you're right. The family have to speak to the problem and come together in order to move through it.